Hello everyone, myself Jaya Agarwal, Assistant Professor Political Science from SPCGC Ajmer. Today we are going to study about this is paper. We are going to study the Western political thinkers, the political views of Western political thinkers, and in this video we will study about the philosophic statesmanship according to Plato. So let's start. We will study features of the system of philosophical statesmanship. There are, according to Plato, two kinds of philosophers: those who have the original vision of the idea of the good, and those who have to follow up or implement that vision and work out its minute operational details. The first, or the founding philosopher, provides the blueprint of the ideal state, and the secondary philosophers engineer the program into action. The latter was expected to go by the original guidelines, and their function is confined to keeping the state as close as possible to the philosopher's blueprint. They are administrating authorities with some discretion, and they will administer according to the instruction and subject to limitations imposed by the original or creative philosopher. Thus, they are instructed to keep the education in the shape in which originally the philosopher hands it over to them. Education being crucial and central to the whole scheme, they will maintain it in its purity, knowing that when modes of music change, there is change in the state. Secondly, they have to see that wealth does not enter the premises of the state. Both wealth and poverty have to be kept at bay. The commerce has to be banished as it tends to defile the fibers of the body politic. Thirdly, they have to keep the population constant and see that the best possible way is produced by the guardians. The best natures must meet with the finest at stated intervals and in regulated ways. They have to see that the whole affair is made very sacred for production of human, and the secondary philosophers have also to see that the whole system conforms to the spirit and form of justice, which must be its diagnostic mark. Besides, they must maintain a defense force strong enough to uh, stop any invasion and meet any danger. The state must be kept in a position of such strength and capability that it is invulnerable in peace and invincible in war and impregnable always. Further, classification of the people in the state is to conform to the criteria of desert and competence, there being no room for the principle of heredity. In order to maintain the system in its purity, they have to take recourse where needed to the transposition of ranks. Communism, that is common living without possession of private property and community of wives, will be an important feature of the system of philosophic rule. For without it, the needed unity will not be achieved and hindrances will not be removed from the path of the rulers. Loyalty to the state must be exclusive and entire, and nothing will stand in between the rulers and the state, not even private family and private property, which is its material basis. So they have to be entirely done away with, and a clean slate, tabula rasa, has to be created on which the new script of philosophy may be written. The philosophic state will have a hierarchical structure, but there will be no separatism, as Ernest Barker complains, for the whole order will be informed by the spirit of philosophy, by justice, by its total dedication to the good. Whatever separatism is there will be external and expedient, the inner structure will be one and entirely integrated. It is for this reason, as already stressed, that education constitutes the heart of the state as also its mind. Plato has thus warned the secondary philosophers: you should hesitate to change the cycle or style of your literature, because you risk everything if you do. The music and literature of a country cannot be altered without major political change. We have Dam's word for it, and I believe him. If the rulers allowed deterioration to overtake the educational system, then all else will come to naught. Significance of the concept. Plato is aware that the idea of philosophic statesmanship is most difficult of realization, but he advances it as a logical proposition which is simply this: whatever helps you realize the highest good, whose vision only the philosopher has and gives to his fellows, must be accepted the guide and goal of life. Only he rules himself to the best of his welfare, who pursues the good as his constant preoccupation. The philosopher alone knows the highest good and the way to realize it. He alone can help followers to attain it. If philosophic rule is no way to achieve deliverance, then there is no way for hope at all. When Plato says that standing face to face is a painful process, he thereby conveys that human beings cannot realize their real good unless they forsake the pleasures of the body and preferred those of the soul. We cannot have the best of the both worlds. We must give up the lower for the sake of the higher. No ideal can be attained without paying the price for it. Plato's awareness of the difficulty of the realization of the ideal, however, leads him in the laws to uphold the second best ideal, in which the people also are allowed some share in government along with the elite. It represents a compromise between the rule by wisdom and that by number. There are to be a popular assembly, an elected council, and an executive body consisting of the guardians of law. At the same time, however, Plato revives his favorite ideal of government by philosophers in the form, or rather, disguise of the that council, the main governing body of the state and its supreme directing mind. His adherence to this council represents a subdued return to the ideal of the republic in a new astronomical form, which astronomy with astronomy and number replacing the dialectic and idea. The state of the laws becomes like that of the republic, and an ensemble laid up in heavens, and rather the earthly antitype of the polity of the heavens, where the stars move in measure through the operation of the mind, and which is the first mover of all created things. Plato remains Plato until his last. He replaces politics of power by that of wisdom, not in the common sense Aristotelian sense, but in the high philosophical sense. It is difficult for the author to agree with the views of those who find in the Republic an anti political manifesto, or that Plato expounds some kind of political philosophy which should ride political power. To quote, in Plato's scheme, there was no power to share. What was shareable was the form of the good written into the structure of the community. Or again, in contrast, the Platonic ruler had a different constituency, for he was not first and foremost a political man, but a philosopher endowed with political power. As a philosopher, his loyalty was to the realm of truth, a world of unchanging and harmonious order. The ruler, in following the true art of statesmanship, was conforming to the knowledge made possible by philosophy and discharging the obligation of philosopher to pursue the truth. And his constituency was not the community, that is, it was not a political constituency that claimed his loyalty, but rather the idea of the good community. So that's all for today from my side. Thank you very much.